Hey guys, it's Amber from NotableInk.com and I am thrilled to share these cards with you guys. So I have lots of watercolor techniques today using Altenew's brand new artist grade watercolor 24 pan set, as well as stamps and dies from the January release. So let's jump right in. So here is the new watercolor set, and this is, according to Altenew, this is artist grade colors. So they are intensely pigmented. Now just look at this case. I love this case. I love purple, and this case is just beautiful. I absolutely love it. It's so fun. It's also nice because it sets itself apart from the black case that is for their metallic watercolors, and that's an 18 pan set. So here's what it looks like when you open it up, and there's 24 half pans. These are labeled according to the color families versus a specific color, which makes so much more sense, okay? Because for the nature of watercolor, and I'm just pulling these out so I can get the pans out, the nature of watercolor, and then just you can see that the actual individual pans are labeled. So I'm just going to peel off some of the packaging, but you're going to get all of the shades of the family with one half pan. So it makes a lot more sense to name the pans by the color family than one specific color. Know what I mean? So I'm just pressing on the pan here. I wanted to see how hard or soft the pigments were, and I am like really digging my nail in there, and it's not budging. So they're really, really dry. But super creamy when you rehydrate them. I just wanted to see if they were soft or hard. I don't know why. I just wanted to. And here's what everything looks like. This pan will never look like this again. It's so pretty and clean. So I just decided, I had a scrap of watercolor paper sitting on my desk, and I thought, okay, well, let's swatch these out, or at least some of them, just to get an idea of how they differ to the 36 pan set. Right off the bat, the first thing I noticed is that these are not, the other watercolor pan set I find act more like a gouache than a watercolor. Definitely you can watercolor with them just fine, but some of them have a milky appearance, and so, or a more opaque appearance, I guess is what I want to say, like gouache. These right off the bat I notice are definitely more transparent. They're crazy pigmented though, you guys. So you can see as I'm swatching them, I'm like barely, I'm just rehydrating them with a wet brush and not really scrubbing over it for too long at all. They rehydrate really quickly. You're able to pick up full pigment easily, and they go onto the paper like a dream. So this is my favorite watercolor paper. It's the Saunders Waterford High White Rough Paper, and it's just my favorite. I don't have the Altenew watercolor paper. They are coming out with that in this release, and I don't have any of that, which is why I'm using this. So I can't tell you how that compares to my favorite watercolor paper. Maybe you guys can let me know once you purchase that, or you have it, or if you try it out, what you think. So here we have some swatches, and I went and created 5 different cards, and then I was cleaning up, found this, and I decided I'm not going to toss it, but I'm also not going to use it as a swatch because it doesn't have all of the colors. Here I'm showing you that some of the colors granulate, like what you would expect from some watercolor paper or watercolors. And so I decided to make a card from this because, I didn't want to toss it. It was so pretty. So we're going to start with the last card that I made, because it just makes sense to go ahead and put the card making in here with the swatch. So I just added a strip of black cardstock. Here I have my new favorite sentiments. I mean, these are just so awesome. This is the Hello and Hug Stamp and Die Bundle. Now these are the dies. There's, as you can see, a shadow die and then the main die. And then there's also a matching stamp set to this as well that has these sub-sentiments, which are just so perfect. So this, I think, is just such a beautiful card with these swatches. I added just a couple Nuvo drops there, and super simple card, but so pretty. It makes me smile. So moving on to the next card, this is the Bold Floral Drape stamp set. Now, this is a large background stamp, and what I'm doing is I'm just peeling it up to make sure that I don't have any bubbles underneath my stamp. What happens when you have a bubble under your stamp, especially like this, is that the recessed parts stick up, and then you can inadvertently ink them, and then that ink is going to transfer to your paper where there shouldn't be ink. So make sure you get the bubbles out. Now, normally I would not attempt to stamp a solid stamp on a rough watercolor paper like this. You can see like how challenging this is, right? Like I stamped this forever. I finally give up and use a Sakura micron pen to fill in the areas. The reason I'm determined to use this paper is the last time that I tried to do a project on my smoother paper, which is lower quality, I didn't have a good experience. It was harder to work with the watercolors, so I was determined to make this work. So I filled all that in, and now I'm just going to dry it, and we're going to watercolor. So I thought it'd be really fun to, instead of using the stamps that go into these empty spaces, to use the watercolor. So I'm just wetting the paper with clean clear water, and then I'm just dropping pigments in. This is really, really easy watercolor technique. So the colors that I have there, I believe, are Mountain Pine, Cherry Blossom, Cool Summer Night, and Fall Harvest. That really hurt my brain just then. So with the Mountain Pine, I start off with just the Mountain Pine, and then after the leaves dry just a little bit, I go back in and drop in some of that Cool Summer Nights. And I just keep working at this. You can see that the two yellow and orange flowers next to where I'm doing right now are really light. So I go back in and add more pigment to that. And here's where I'm dropping in the blue into the green leaves. And you can see that my green bled into that flower there. So I just cleaned my brush, wet it, and went right over that, and then dabbed it with a paper towel, and it comes right up. These paints lift really well, and they move really nicely on the paper. So I wasn't really a fan of this flower, and so I'm just going to go in. I wet it again because that flower was totally dry, and I'm going to drop in more pigments and just correct it. So I left this in here just so that you can see how to correct it if you don't like one. If it's already dry, go ahead and wet the whole flower, and then you can start dropping in your paint. Now, one of the things that's important when you're doing a technique like this is when you're changing your colors, you have to make sure that you have the same consistency of pigments from color to color. What I mean by that is, so I have clean clear water here. I'm taking paint directly from the pan there, right? And I'm dropping that in. So that's super high, that's super pigmented. So my pink, I need to take some of that from the pan as well. If I were to take that watered down pink that I have just mixed on the side here, I would get a bloom in my watercolor piece right there. It would just start to, it would create a white watermark on there. So you need to make sure that you have the same amount of pigment in all of your mixtures. So I've gone ahead and cut this with an A2 sized 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 stacking die, rectangle stacking die. I have taken 4 hellos and just built them up and then put them on a vellum shadow from that same die. And then with the leftover piece, of course, you know I'm going to make a 2-for. Anytime I have a 6x6 background or pattern paper, I have to make 2 cards because I don't like those scraps hanging around. And I love the wavy edges of this. I love that, I don't know, I love that unfinished look to the edges. I thought it was really pretty. So I've added some Nuvo drops, and then those are the finished cards. I think they're really striking. I love all of the black in that design. So here I am taking Lapis Lazuli is the color family for this one. This is the one that has like azurite in it. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous color. I mean, it is so pretty. So I've wet the entire piece, and this is an A2 size piece of, no, that's not true. It's not A2 size. It's larger than that, and then I'm going to die cut it. But I just put clean clear water over the whole piece, and then I'm just creating a gradient effect. So this dries back, and so then I decided to come in with a second layer. And you can see, like, so I'm using a number 12 brush for this. For the last piece, I believe I was using a 6 round. This is a number 12, and these brush set is from Wonder Forest, if you know her, Dana Fox. They're great brushes, I really enjoy them. And I'm just gonna dry that. Then I'm gonna put on a piece of scrapbook.com adhesive because I wanna dry emboss this, but in case it accidentally cuts it, I want to make sure that none of those pieces come out. So that adhesive is gonna hold everything in place and I don't have to worry about it. After dry embossing, I actually inked up the cover plate with clear embossing ink, placed it back on, ran it through the die cut machine again, and then embossed in silver embossing powder, which you can see there. And then I also stamped a wild Flora image onto vellum. What I'm showing you is that I'm putting some foam adhesive underneath there. And what's nice about that is it turned the centers of my flowers white, which I think makes them pop a little bit more. And then I just have 3 more pieces underneath the stems. The leaves are just free flowing, and I pulled those up a little bit. This card I love, but I don't have footage of it because my camera stopped filming. But I used the same watercolor set, the same paper, a different flower from the Wild Flora set, and then I did some partial die cutting on it, trimmed it down, and then popped it up on this metallic, it's kind of like a navy blue metallic paper. And I'll have all the supplies listed below, as always. I really love how this card came out. I think it's really clean and simple, even though there's no white. I normally think of clean and simple as a lot of white space, but this space is blue, still considered white space, so to speak. Now, I've used the Ornate cover die, and I've cut a piece of text weight vellum. So that's 27-pound vellum. I'll have that linked below. Because I'm going to use this as a stencil, I kind of like it to just be thinner than the 40-pound. I don't know, that's just personal preference. So I have a vase from the Mod Vases, and I'm just going to put this over top of it and use it as a stencil, and I'm going to ink up the stamp through the stencil. So this was something I did for the first time on one of the Facebook Lives over the summer, and, well, last summer, 2019. And I really like this technique. You could definitely use the die and cut out the shape and use the stencil and just ink blend it. But I like the look of stamping it. And the other thing, the reason I like doing it this way is then when I go to use the die to cut this out, and of course you don't have to use the die, you could just make a 1-layer card with this. But when I cut it out, I have that white border around the vase. Versus if you die cut it and then ink blended it, or ink blended it and then die cut it, you wouldn't have that white border. So I've taken my homemade stencil and I've just spritzed it with some water so that I could activate that ink, and I'm just going to press it down on a scrap of cardstock because I don't want to waste the ink. That's great ink and it's so pretty. So I'm going to create a different look. Also looks really cool. So we've got the positive, we've got the negative. So I die cut that with another vase. And then I'm going to use the stencil also. So we can get 3 looks out of just inking up this one stencil. So I used a Nuvo large glue pen and just put adhesive on the back. I thought I was going to use one of the smaller vases. So I should have actually put glue on more of this than I did. But I just go in with a little bit of Ranger Multi Matte Medium to get any areas that didn't get glue on them, because I ended up using this larger vase. So I die cut that, and we have 3 totally different looks. I was hoping that I was going to be able to use all 3 vases, but it just looked too cluttered on the card. So I cut a piece of cardstock to 3 7/8 by 8 inches, I believe it is. It might be 7.5. I don't know. I just kind of picked what looked visually pleasing once I had the vases and the foliage kind of all together. I knew I wanted a tall, skinny card. I kind of just made up my own dimensions. So I popped these up on fun foam. The leaves and the foliage that you see there are from retro Plantines. I didn't show the stamping of that because those are just silhouette stamps, so super easy. And I did Galactic Stream, and I believe it's Silver Mist was that color. And those are the cards, guys. That was super fast. I hope that wasn't too fast for you, but there was a lot to get through. So I absolutely love all of these products that I used today. They are such great sets, and I can't wait to use them again. I hope you enjoyed all these watercolor techniques and that cool stencil technique, and we'll give it a try. If you do, tag me on social media at Notable Ink. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell button so that you're notified of new content, and I'll see you soon with more inspiration. Thanks for stopping by.